Pokemon Scarlet and Violet's competitive era is nearing its end, and the Pokemon Company announced that Regulation F will be the final rule set for official tournaments. Regulation F allows the use of any Pokemon that isn't considered a restricted legendary. However, this isn't the first time this rule set has been used in tournaments, as it was first used about 2 years ago. While some people are glad that Regulation F is making a comeback, others aren't so enthusiastic to return to one of the less diverse metas of competitive Scarlet and Violet. However, I'm happy to see Regulation F return for one specific reason. I want redemption. Why do I want redemption? Well, to understand that, we're gonna have to go back. This is me 2 years ago at Toronto Regionals, my very first VGC tournament. I'd only been playing VGC for about 2 months at this point, so I wasn't expecting to do too well. But I defied the odds and finished with a record of 5 wins and 4 losses. However, that impressive record would mark the start of my downfall. I let my better than expected performance inflate my ego. Since I did so well at Toronto, I assumed I would do just as well, if not better, at my next tournament, Orlando Regionals. Oh, Adam, you naive idiot. The rule set for Orlando would be Regulation F, which allowed Pokemon included in the newly released Indigo Disc DLC, so I had to build an entirely new team. I spent the next few months preparing, and while there were quite a few challenges, I was still somewhat confident in the team that I built. Then the big day arrived. Orlando Regionals. I did so well in Toronto, I got a ton of practice in, I built a great balanced team. Orlando's gonna go great, I can feel it. Should have seen that coming. Going winless at Orlando was a massive wake-up call, and the fact that I did so well at Toronto made this failure feel even worse. I knew I was still a rookie, so I shouldn't have been too surprised, but I couldn't shake that awful feeling. Even today, 2 years later, my horrendous performance at Orlando continues to hang over me like a dark cloud, especially since I haven't been to a single regional tournament since then. I ended up taking a break from VGC for about 4 months, then made my return for the first run of Regulation H in the fall of 2024. I built a brand new team and competed in the Grand Challenge that December, and my performance was pretty decent. I had noticeably improved as a player since Orlando, and I resolved to make 2025 the year of my VGC training arc. Throughout 2025, I tried out different regulations, built new teams, and competed in more global challenges. Then I took a 5-month break due to some serious personal issues, but I returned in November during the second half of Regulation H 2.0. With Pokémon Champions having been announced as the game being used for the 2026 Pokémon World Championships, I knew that Scarlet and Violet didn't have much time left. And when I saw the Pokemon Company announce that Regulation F would be the final official rule set, the first word that came to my mind was redemption. I could finally do something about that dark cloud hanging over me since Orlando. I spent this past year training and learning the meta, and I feel like I've become a better player. Plus, I'd like to think that I'm much better at team building now than I was 2 years ago. I mean, seriously, what was I thinking running Assault Vest Metagross? This was my chance to show just how much I had grown since Orlando. And I wouldn't be satisfied with just battling on the online ladder or competing in grand challenges. I needed to compete in best of 3 tournaments. And last month, I decided to enter my very first Victory Road Challenge tournament. Victory Road hosts at least one tournament every month, and some of the biggest players in the world compete in them regularly. I knew that I'd get a real challenge from this tournament, far more of a challenge than any global challenge I've done so far. I made some final adjustments to the team I'd been using over the past few weeks, and I entered the tournament. Before we get into the battles, it's time to go over the team that I used in the tournament. And unsurprisingly, I picked my favorite archetype. Hyper offense all the way, baby. I started off by picking 2 attackers that I knew I wanted on my team. From there, I tried out other attackers that could complement my 2 attackers really well and cover their weaknesses. I eventually landed on 2 Pokemon that worked the best with the 2 that I already selected. And from there, I had to pick 2 support Pokemon that could help my other 4 reach their maximum potential. And this is what I came up with. First up is Raging Bolt, also known as Jiraiku. You get it? Because it's Raikou and a giraffe. Jiraiku. Jokes about its long neck aside, Raging Bolt is one of the best special attackers in the game with an incredible typing of Electric and Dragon. It also has access to one of the best priority moves in the game, Thunderclap. This move not only makes up for its average speed stat, but it can also be devastatingly powerful. Unsurprisingly, I'll be running this move on my Raging Bolt. As for its other moves, I have Thunderbolt for stronger and more consistent Electric type damage, Draco Meteor for massive Dragon type burst damage at the cost of a 2-stage drop to its special attack, and a 10% chance to miss, and Protect. The stat spread I'll be running on it maximizes special attack and has a good amount of bulk to it, but I gave it enough speed EVs to reach a speed stat of 103 in order to outspeed specific Pokemon under Tailwind. I've chosen Leftovers as the hold item for more survivability, and a Terra type of Electric to further increase the damage of Thunderbolt and Thunderclap, as well as to drop its weakness to Ice, Dragon, and Fairy if necessary. Next is Fluttermane. I know, I'm using two of the best special attackers in the format, how original of me, but I had so much fun using these two on so many of my teams, and it just felt right to bring both of them back. Unlike Raging Bolt, Fluttermane is ignoring bulk and focusing fully on special attack and speed. This does make it extremely susceptible to powerful physical attacks, but since it's holding the booster energy, which gives it a 50% speed boost, it'll be almost guaranteed to be the fastest thing on the field. Thanks to its high speed, it can quickly use Icy Wind to slow down my opponent's speedier threats. Shadow Ball and Moonblast are Fluttermane's strongest moves and provide great offensive coverage, with Ghost and Fairy being excellent offensive types in this format. Finally, Protect rounds out the set. Fluttermane usually won't be terastallizing, but if it needs to, it has a Terra type of Fairy to boost Moonblast damage. The team's got some powerful special attacking threats so far, so how about we add some physical attackers? And I've got the perfect bear in mind. Urshifu Rapid Strike. What can I say about Urshifu that hasn't already been said? An ideal stat spread for a hyper offense Pokemon, a great typing of water and fighting, Surging Strikes being an incredible signature move, Unseen Fist allowing it to ignore Protect. I know it might not seem like the most original choice, but when team building, there were so many scenarios where Urshifu fit in really well and made the team feel more complete. Surging Strikes will be Urshifu's main method of damage, so it's holding the Mystic Water and has a Terra type of water to boost the move's damage to unreal levels. For the rest of its moves, Close Combat provides powerful fighting type damage, Aqua Jet is there as a priority option and is also boosted by the Mystic Water and Terra Water, and Attack is a helpful protection move to scout out my opponent or wait out a turn. Urshifu is running max attack and speed for its stats, but with an attack boosting nature over a speed boosting one in order to deal maximum damage. But what if there was a way to make Urshifu deal even more damage? Well, that's what the next member of the team is here to do. Chen Pao is Urshifu's partner in crime. Its ability Sword of Rune lowers the defense stat of everyone on the field other than itself by 25%. When Chen Pao and Urshifu are on the field, Surging Strikes and Close Combat do unreal damage, and Aqua Jet can even pick up some surprising KOs. However, Chen Pao isn't just there as Urshifu's hype man, it can deal some major damage by itself. Sucker Punch is a dark type priority move that deals respectable damage, but if the target doesn't attack, the move fails. Ice Spinner is a powerful ice type attack that removes terrain, so Chen Pao also happens to be my terrain control. It might be weaker than Icicle Crash and doesn't have the flinch chance, but terrain removal is extremely helpful with how common Rillaboom and Indeedee are. Also, Ice Spinner can't miss. Sacred Sword is Chen Pao's final damaging move and not only provides fighting type coverage, but also ignores the opponent's defense boosts. Chen Pao is holding the Focus Sash, which prevents it from getting one hit KO'd at full HP, and it has a Terra type of Ghost to drop its 4 times weakness to fighting or to dodge a fake out. Since it's guaranteed to survive at least one turn, Chen Pao can completely focus on attack and speed for its stats, with a speed boosting nature to ensure that it's one of the fastest things on the field. So far, the team is all damage dealers, but these guys are going to need some support. However, since I'm a big fan of Unga Bunga Hyper Offense, I decided to pick 2 hybrid supporters, which are Pokemon that have a support function but can also deal respectable damage themselves. First is quite possibly the most important support Pokemon of the team, Tornadus. Tornadus is so vital to this team because it has Tailwind, which doubles the speed of the Pokemon on my side of the field for 4 turns. If Tornadus can set up a Tailwind, the rest of the team is free to go absolutely crazy without worrying about being outsped. Tornadus is also my weather control as it knows the move Sunny Day. This is mainly to shut down my opponent's rain or snow, but it can also activate Raging Bolt or Fluttermane's Photosynthesis. Taunt can stop my opponent's Pokemon from using status moves, and if it's used on the right Pokemon at the right time, I can potentially secure a win. As great as these moves are, the ability Prankster makes them even better as it gives these 3 moves priority. For damage, Tornadus has Bleak Wind Storm, a move that hits both opponents and can even lower their speed stats. However, yeah, that accuracy is going to be a problem. Whether Bleak Wind hits or misses can make or break a game, and watching it miss can be one of the most infuriating things in VGC. For the stats, Tornadus has some investment in HP for survivability and special attack for Bleak Wind Storm damage, but it has maximum speed and a speed boosting nature to ensure that I can at least speed tie an opponent's Tornadus. Tornadus is holding the Covert Cloak for immunity to secondary effects like Fake Out's Flinch Chance and Icy Wind Speed Drop, and has a Terra type of Dark in case I want to make it immune to Prankster. And last but certainly not least is the king of VGC, Incineroar. Oh, you thought he got to retire after my Reg H video? Hell nah. I'll start with Incineroar's stat spread since it's pretty unique. It has some investment in speed so it can outspeed most other Incineroars and a decent amount of bulk for survivability. As for the rest of its EVs, say it with me y'all, Max Attack Incineroar, baby! Max Attack makes Flare Blitz a raw nuke, especially if Tornadus can set up the sun. It also boosts knockoff's damage, and while that move isn't meant to be a nuke like Flare Blitz, it can come in clutch by picking up a helpful KO, and of course it can knock off the opponent's opponent's hold item. Its last two moves are Fake Out and Parting Shot, which are Incineroar's most infamous support moves. Fake Out can flinch an opponent on the first turn, and Parting Shot lowers the target's attack stats and lets Incineroar switch out. Speaking of lowering stats, Intimidate's a really good ability, just saying. Incineroar has a Terra type of Ghost for an immunity to normal and fighting type moves, and is holding the safety goggles to protect itself from Spore and Rage Powder. With the team gone over, it's time to get into the battles. Before we get started, I want to say that I'll be doing things differently compared to my last tournament video. Rather than showing the raw livestream footage with my commentary at the time, I'll be narrating over the footage and giving a turn-by-turn analysis of each match. The battle footage will also be cut down considerably compared to the Regulation Age video for the sake of time and to make the video flow better. Please let me know which style you prefer in the comments. Also, if any of you would like to see the raw footage with my commentary at the time, let me know in the comments as well, and I may upload it as a separate video. With that out of the way, I hope y'all are ready, because it's battle time. The Victory Road tournaments are open to players around the world, so they set their start time to cater to their international players. This meant that the tournament will be starting at 9 a.m. for us East Coasters, and me, being the responsible adult that I am, stayed up till 3 a.m. the night before. I'd be competing in this tournament on 5 hours of sleep. Would this affect my gameplay? Only one way to find out, as I'm paired up with my first opponent. The Victory Road December Challenge officially begins. My first opponent ran Gouging Fire with Howl to boost the damage of Rillaboom and Chen Pao. However, I was far more worried about his Terra Fairy, Blood Moon, or Saluna. My team doesn't do too well against Blood Moon. Urshifu and Chen Pao might seem like an easy win button, but most Blood Moons aren't afraid to terrastalize in front of that duo. And if it can survive the onslaught, it'll fire off a Blood Moon and potentially delete one of my Pokemon. He also had Choice Band Dragapult and Galarian Moltres, but he never brought either of them to our games. Game 1 begins and we both lead with our Fake Out users. Knowing that his Rillaboom's Fake Out will go first and likely target Incineroar, I decide to do something risky. I get Tornadus out of there knowing that I risk getting KO'd by Icicle Crash, and I decide to Terra Ghost my Incin for the Fake Out immunity. Chen Pao tanks Icicle Crash well, Fake Out doesn't affect Incin, and I know full well that I can only get away with a play like this in game 1, but it's still really funny. My opponent sends out Gouging Fire, and I notice that Photosynthesis boosts its speed, meaning that I need Tailwind in order to outspeed it. We both protect our Chen Paos, and Gouging Fire uses Howl. Thankfully, I targeted Parting Shot onto the Gouging Fire, neutralizing its attack boost. Incineroar dips, Urshifu comes in, then Incin comes back to get in another attack drop. I get hit with my own attack drop because of Breaking Swipe, but my switch pays off as Sacred Sword targets my Terra Ghost Incin, and Surging Strikes takes down Chen Pao. Just like that, I'm up 2 Pokemon. But then, the damn bear comes in. And a Terra Safari, who could have seen that coming? I decide to play more defensive this turn, protecting Urshifu and hitting Gouging Fire with another Parting Shot. Thank God I barely survived that Heat Crash, and that Blood Moon targeted Urshifu. With Torrent safely on the field, I'm presented with 2 options. I can either get my Tailwind up, or I can predict a Yawn from the Blood Moon and go for Taunt. I go for option 2. Gouging Fire howls again, Surging Strikes takes Blood Moon down to half HP, and Yawn is blocked. I made the right call. With Gouging Fire at -1, I'm not too worried about it, so I focus on getting rid of the Blood Moon. Bleakwind Storm and Surging Strikes finish the job. My opponent forfeits knowing he can't come back from this, and I win game 1. After that great start, I decide to bring in the same 4 for game 2. My opponent leads with Blood Moon and Gouging Fire this time, while I lead with Torn and Chen Pao. This is the perfect opportunity to get my Tailwind up as Chen Pao and Blood Moon protect, while Torn takes some damage from Breaking Swipe. Blood Moon Terra's next turn. Ice Spinner and Bleakwind do decent damage, but Heat Crash KOs Torn, and Blood Moon brings Chen Pao down to Focus Sash. With Tailwind up, however, Urshifu is in the perfect position to sweep. My opponent realizes this and gets Blood Moon out of there, but I target Gouging Fire with Terra Water Surging Strikes and it goes down. However, he reveals Rillaboom as his last Pokemon. With Chen Pao and Rillaboom threatening priority, Urshifu isn't exactly in the best position. But instead of switching it out, I switch out Chen Pao for Incineroar. The Intimidate drop is helpful and I can protect Urshifu this turn, but I'm not sure if keeping Urshifu on the field is the best play here. I guess I thought I still needed Chen Pao for something and I didn't want to just sack it. My switch does pay off as Fake Out gets protected and Sucker Punch fails, but my Tailwind runs out. Now that I have Fake Out pressure, I have to target Rillaboom, otherwise Urshifu goes down to a Grassy Glide. And rather than have Chen Pao go down, my opponent switches in Blood Moon and lets it take the Surging Strikes. Chen Pao comes back out, and in my mind, I'm thinking Urshifu has to get some form of damage in, so I use Aqua Jet in case I get hit with Grassy Glide. But not only does Rillaboom not use Grassy Glide, Incineroar gets double targeted and goes down. I would have been totally safe to use Surging Strikes on Chen Pao that turn. Because of that read, I'm now pinned against the wall as Urshifu gets double targeted the next turn and goes down, leaving me with a 1 HP Chen Chien-Pao, and no hope of winning game 2. We're taking this one to a game 3. My opponent starts with the same lead as game 2, but I'm going full Unga Bunga this time. No holding back, I want that damn bear gone, and I pull it off turn 1. Rillaboom comes in, I protect with Urshifu, and I switch Chien-Pao out for Incineroar. Fake Out is wasted on Incineroar, and Gouging Fire uses Howl to basically undo the Intimidate. I then bring Torn in since this is the safest time to do it, and he survives the Breaking Swipe and Wood Hammer double up. I figure I might as well Tailwind while Rillaboom does chip damage to Incin, Gouging Fire howls once again, and Incin finishes off Rillaboom. Chien-Pao comes back on the field and takes down Torn with Sucker Punch while Incin goes down to a Breaking Swipe, leaving us both down to our last 2 Pokemon. Time to finish this game the way I started it. Unga Bunga massive damage. Confident that I don't need to double up on Gouging Fire, I bring Chien-Pao down to its Sash with Sacred Sword, and Terra Water, Mystic Water boosted Surging Strikes finally gets rid of that Gouging Fire. My Chien-Pao goes down as well, but thanks to Tailwind, I know my Aqua Jet will go before my opponent's Sucker Punch, and this game is locked up. I win my first match of the day. I only had about a 10-minute break before I was matched with my second opponent, and I was presented with quite the challenge. My opponent had the duo of Alolan Ninetales and Choice Specs Articuno. My initial thought was that Tornadus would be perfect for this matchup since I can use Sunny Day to shut down Alolan Ninetales' Snow. However, since this is an open team sheet tournament, my opponent knows that I'm running Sunny Day, so they can prepare for that scenario. Sunny Day also powers up their Raging Bolt and Incineroar, so changing the weather would be a double-edged sword. Regardless of my worries, I decide to lead with Torn and Incin for game 1 while my opponent leads with Incineroar and Raging Bolt, immediately putting me in a bit of a bind. I use turn 1 to safely set up Tailwind by using Fake Out on Raging Bolt, but my opponent's Incineroar U-turns out and brings in Ninetales to set up the Snow. I assume that Ninetales is bait for my Incin, so instead of using Flare Blitz, I use Parting Shot on Raging Bolt and bring in my own Raging Bolt while I switch out Torn for Chien-Pao. My prediction is correct as he switches Ninetales and brings his Incineroar back on the field. However, Chien-Pao takes quite the powerful Thunderbolt and gets paralyzed. Chien-Pao can't do a damn thing while paralyzed and at -1 attack, so I bring Incin back in, but the switching games continue as Ninetales comes back in and Incineroar U-turns again, bringing in Articuno this time. As quickly as Articuno switches in, it switches right back out for Incineroar. At this point, I've had enough of the revolving door as I Terra Raging Bolt and fire a Terra boosted Thunderbolt onto the Incineroar, but Ninetales goes next and sets up the Aurora Veil, and at -1 with the Veil up and the defense buff from the Snow, my Incin's Flare Blitz doesn't even do half to Ninetales. The Tailwind runs out and I decide to double up on Ninetales. However, I very foolishly say, if Ninetales protects, I'm gonna feel like an idiot. Damn it! I had to speak it into existence. Well, there's a wasted turn, and Incineroar U-turns out again, and Articuno comes back. However, the Snow stops. I get Incin out of there and bring in Pao for what's most likely going to be a sack, and my opponent Terra's Articuno. However, since the Snow is stopped, Blizzard misses Raging Bolt, Chien-Pao goes down as expected, and Raging Bolt only takes a Moonblast from Ninetales while hitting Articuno with Thunderbolt. I then decide to bring in Torn and set up the Sunny Day to boost Raging Bolt's damage output. Ninetales hits them both with Icy Wind, but Articuno's Blizzard gets the double miss. Unfortunately, the Photosynthesis boosted Terra boosted Thunderbolt isn't enough to take down Articuno, and honestly, I might have been better off going for Ninetales to at least secure the weather advantage. I set up Tailwind next turn while Articuno switches out for Raging Bolt and eats a Thunderbolt for breakfast. I assume my opponent really wants to set the Snow back up, so they'll switch Ninetales out for Incineroar, but I'm wrong. As I swap Torn for Incin, I watch my opponent double up on Raging Bolt. Ninetales goes down to a Thunderbolt, but the Moonblast damage was enough to put Bolt in range to go down to a Draco Meteor. My only hope at this point is to take down Articuno before it gets to do anything. But of course, Torn misses Bleak Wind, and any hopes I had of winning game 1 are dashed. For game 2, I make a pretty big adaptation. I don't bring Torn. However, it isn't long before I immediately regret that decision. You didn't. Oh, Snowcloak. I completely forgot about Snowcloak. Articuno not only has a 50% defense boost and perfectly accurate blizzards in the snow, but it also has a 20% evasion boost. I'm gonna be real, my luck this game was absolute garbage. Not only did I miss Articuno 3 times in a row, but Incin also got frozen. Ninetales kept using Icy Wind for speed control, and Articuno massacred Urshifu and Raging Bolt. Unsurprisingly, I lost game 2 in the match, but at least Incin got the last word in. This isn't even gonna kill, because his Veil's still up. This isn't even gonna kill. Max attack Incineroar, baby! Not like it matters, Recoil kills me. After a much-needed break, I'm paired up with my third opponent. My opponent for round 3 is running a classic Fire, Water, Grass core team with some elements of balance and some elements of hyper offense. This is a matchup I'm pretty used to, so in my mind, it's all gonna come down to who plays better. They lead with Rillaboom and Raging Bolt, while I lead with Torn and Incin. I see the opportunity to do the same thing I did in my first match. Terra Ghost Incin to block the Fake Out, and Flare Blitz Rillaboom immediately. I also get my Tailwind up safely, and Torn survives a Dragon Pulse. Thankfully, Thunderclap is Raging Bolt's only electric type attack, so without any Calm Mind boosts, the only way Torn can get one-hit KO'd is if I Bleak Wind. They send out their Incineroar, and I attack with Torn, assuming it's going down this turn, but Raging Bolt protects. My parting shot whiffs, and their Incineroar taunts mine, meaning no more parting shots. I start thinking of the long game and decide to taunt Raging Bolt to stop it from setting up with Calm Mind while knocking off their Incineroar Citrus Berry. Raging Bolt can't Calm Mind, and my Incin barely survives a crit Flare Blitz. However, next turn I foolishly double up into the Raging Bolt and leave their Incineroar alive, and as a result, I lose both Incin and Torn. I'm left with Chien-Pao and Urshifu, and my opponent tears their Raging Bolt to Fairy. I finally get rid of the Incineroar and bring Raging Bolt to below half, while Chien-Pao barely survives a Dragon Pulse. Landorus is their final Pokemon, and I know it has Substitute, but I'm far more afraid of Thunderclap. Aqua Jet unfortunately doesn't finish off Raging Bolt, and Raging Bolt ends up targeting Chien-Pao instead, meaning I was very safe to use Searching Strikes that turn, and Landorus gets behind its Substitute. Now here, I make a huge mistake. I'm still very much afraid of Urshifu going down to Thunderclap, but Sucker Punch would have been more than enough to take Raging Bolt down. Instead, I used Ice Spinner onto Landorus' Substitute. All of this was under the assumption that Landorus targets Chien-Pao, which it did. Raging Bolt does go down to Aqua Jet, and I get rid of the Substitute, but Earth Power finishes off Chien-Pao, and Urshifu is up against a Landorus that I know it doesn't outspeed. Aqua Jet is my only hope, but it isn't enough, and I lose game 1 after Urshifu goes down to Earth Power. It was a really close game, but that was a huge blunder on my part. Hopefully, game 2 goes better for me. Unfortunately, game 2 does not go better for me. In fact, it goes far worse. Torn and Fluttermane was not the best lead here, as they both risk being one-hit KO'd, so I swap in Chien-Pao. However, that ends up screwing me over, because due to Sword of Rune, Rillaboom's Grassy Glide is enough to one-hit KO Fluttermane, and it goes down without accomplishing anything. Things only get worse as they predict the Bleak Wind and one-shot Torn with Thunderclap, then send out Incineroar to intimidate Chien-Pao and Urshifu. We both know I can only rely on priority moves for so long, so eventually my opponent calls me out and uses Thunderclap on Urshifu. And just like that, I lose my third match. Game 1 was close, but I fumbled game 2 horrendously. To make day 2 of this tournament, you can't lose more than 2 matches, so I'm already on my tournament life. One more loss and my run is over. I'm feeling the pressure as I'm paired up with my 4th opponent. Surely things can't get any worse. It's not looking good, chat. I say this like I'm live. I'm not live. This is not looking good, y'all, because I saw the team sheet and it's my favorite. It just had to be a Trick Room team, and it's got everything that makes my skin crawl. Farigiraf is one of the best Trick Room setters since it can block priority with its ability Armor Tail, and this one has Terra Fire, so Incineroar's knockoff can't one-hit KO it. Volcarona has Rage Powder to further ensure I can't KO Farigiraf before Trick Room goes up. Ursaluna with the Flame Orb Guts combo, and Torkoal with the Choice Specs and Eruption can massacre everything once Trick Room goes up. Iron Hands is obnoxiously bulky and hits like a truck, and if for some reason my opponent doesn't want to set up Trick Room, there's Hisuian Lilligant with Chlorophyll and After You. Needless to say, I'm in for hell if I want to stay alive in this tournament. Game 1 starts, and I expect my opponent to lead with Farigiraf and Volcarona, so I lead with Torn and Incin. The plan is to use Bleak Wind Storm and Knockoff to hopefully one-hit KO the Farigiraf before it ruins my life. Since Incineroar has safety goggles and Bleak Wind hits both opponents, I don't have to worry about redirection with Rage Powder. I'm also expecting Farigiraf to Terra to Fire to survive the double up. The only way I can stop Trick Room is if Bleak Wind hits at least Farigiraf and Knockoff gets a crit. Surprisingly, my opponent switches Volcarona for Iron Hands, but then he Terras Farig like I expected. Here's how the turn played out. Don't miss Farig. That ruined everything. Alright, I needed it to hit. Now that's it. Now you get Trick Room. That's it. The worst part. I think if Bleak Wind hit, I could have killed Farig. And I would have stopped Trick Room. Now I lose. I think I might hate Bleak Wind Storm almost as much as I hate Trick Room. Speaking of Trick Room, now I gotta deal with it for 4 more turns. I refuse to give up though, so I switch Torn out for Raging Bolt, predicting a Wild Charge into that slot, and I Parting Shot onto the Iron Hands after taking a Hyper Voice, bringing in Urshifu. I switch Incin back in as it can take a Drain Punch at -2 far better than Urshifu can take a Wild Charge at -1, and I fire a Thunderbolt at Farig. However, Farig switches out for Torkoal, and Thunderbolt barely doesn't get the KO. At such low HP, I know my opponent won't lock into Eruption, so my biggest concern is Earth Power. I have Incin attack Iron Hands, assuming it'll switch into Farig, and I protect Raging Bolt, hoping that Torkoal targets it. I call the switch right, but Earth Power targets Incin. Well, that's a problem. I double protect Bolt in vain, but it becomes Torkoal's next victim. Torn tanks a Hyper Voice, fires off a Bleak Wind, and misses Torkoal. It does get the KO on Farig, confirming that my plan on turn 1 would have worked had Torn not forgotten his damn glasses at home. Thankfully, I've survived every turn of Trick Room, and I have the speed advantage once again. With Torn and Urshifu left, it looks like I can turn this game around. I know Bleakwind in close combat won't take down Iron Hands this turn, but if I can get its HP low enough and KO Torkoal, then I can lock the game up even if Torn goes down to Wild Charge. As long as Bleakwind doesn't miss Torkoal again. No, come on, come on, come on! Tornadus, you're a fucking bum, you know that? Thanks to that miss, Urshifu is now facing a 2v1 at 20 HP, and there's no way I can win. My opponent takes game 1. Thanks, Torn. I know I can always count on your inaccurate ass. I'm down a game, but it's not over yet. We both switch things up for game 2, as my opponent leads with Farigiraf and Iron Hands, while I lead with Torn and Urshifu. I know I can't stop Trick Room with this lead, so I switch Urshifu out for Incin, knowing that a Fake Out is going into that slot. Bleakwind somehow hits them both, but it doesn't matter as the Nightmare comes to life. However, as I sit there in utter pain, I come up with an idea that shouldn't work, but at a time like this, I need to throw caution to the wind. What if I Terra Ghost Incin, predicting a Drain Punch and a Hyper Voice, then set up Sunny Day with Torn? Just from that, you could probably see where I'm going with this. Even though Iron Hands hits Torn with Wild Charge, I still get the Sun up first because of Prankster. Torn does go down after the Hyper Voice, but now it's time to see if my idea works. Max Attack Incineroar, baby! God, I love it when a plan comes together. With Iron Hands down, my opponent sends out Ursaluna. Ursaluna under Trick Room is a big problem for my team. It protects turn 1 so it can safely activate Guts, and Farigiraf crits Incin with Psychic. His sacrifice isn't in vain, as Raging Bolt takes down Farigiraf with Thunderbolt. We're both down to our last 2 Pokemon, as they send out Volcarona and I send out Urshifu. There's 2 turns of Trick Room remaining, and my only hope is to double protect. They both protect the first turn, and Bolt gets the double, but Urshifu doesn't. If I lose Urshifu this turn, it's all over. But Ursaluna goes for Earthquake, and not only do they deal a ton of damage to their own Volcarona, but Urshifu survives. Struggle Bug does almost nothing to Urshifu, and I make it through Trick Room. Can I actually win this game? I've got the speed advantage, but I also notice my opponent hasn't used their Terra yet. I'm convinced that they'll Terra Water their Volcarona to resist Surging Strikes, so I go for Close Combat instead. I make the right call as Volcarona Terras and Close Combat takes it down. However, I could still lose if Ursaluna survives or dodges Draco Meteor and follows up with an Earthquake. Draco Meteor hits, but it just misses the KO. But by some odd miracle, Ursaluna goes for Headlong Rush onto Raging Bolt, leaving Urshifu alive. I don't even need to attack next turn as the burn takes Ursaluna down and I win game 2 by the skin of my teeth. My heart's beating like mad, but I lock in for game 3, the game that decides my tournament life. We bring the same leads from game 2, but I take a big risk and keep Urshifu in this time. Thankfully, Iron Hands only goes for Fake Out, while Bleakwind hits both targets and Farig sets up Evil Incarnate. I just have to survive these next 4 turns. I switch things up from game 2 and swap Torn for Incin instead of Urshifu, while Urshifu protects. Wild Charge does whiff into Urshifu, while Farigiraf uses Hyper Voice and gets his Throat Spray boost. With Hyper Voice and Drain Punch being the biggest threats, having Incin Terra to Ghost seems like the best play once again, while Urshifu switches with Bolt. Iron Hands goes for another Wild Charge and does almost nothing to Bolt, and I call the Hyper Voice. Bolt's down to about half, but Incin almost takes down Farig with Knockoff. I decide to go on the attack this turn. Farig protects, so Thunderbolt whiffs, Bolt takes a Drain Punch from Iron Hands, and Incin hits Iron Hands with a Flare Blitz. It doesn't one-hit KO like it did in game 2, but it burns Iron Hands, which is huge. Bolt is way too vital to lose right now, so I switch it out for Torn while my opponent doubles up on Incin and takes him down. And then I see the words I've been waiting for. The Twisted Dimensions have returned to normal. Farig is still alive, but if I can take it down with Bleakwind, Trick Room is out of the picture. Farig protects, however, and while Urshifu could have broken through it, I take this opportunity to KO Iron Hands instead. Volcarona comes out, and I get a bit complacent, thinking that they won't go Terra Water this time. Farig switches with Ursaluna, they Terra their Volcarona and use Rage Powder. Ursaluna avoids damage this turn since Bleakwind also misses, but Volcarona gets a crucial speed drop. Unfortunately, Urshifu ends up getting burned due to Volcarona's Flame Body, and it heals up with its Citrus Berry. Things are looking rough right now, but I come up with another plan. I decide to taunt the Volcarona to stop it from using Rage Powder while I protect Urshifu. Thankfully, Ursaluna targets Urshifu with Facade. Not only does my plan work, but I make it through the turn unscathed. Confident that Bleakwind and Surging Strike should be enough to KO the Ursaluna, I go for the attack, but of course Torn misses. He always misses! Okay, to be fair, Bleakwind might not have been enough to make the difference, but who knows? Volcarona lands a Fire Blast on Torn, because of course it does, and Facade takes down Urshifu. I send out Bolt, and my opponent knows I can safely hit Volcarona with Thunderbolt thanks to the speed drop. Otherwise, I'd have to risk Thunderclap with Farig still alive in the back. However, Farig does swap, but with Volcarona. Ursaluna protects, and Bleakwind actually hits and KOs the Giraffe. Volcarona comes back out at normal speed, and not wanting to risk Thunderclap whiffing due to Rage Powder, I go for Thunderbolt. Ursaluna miraculously double protect and it fails, meaning that Bleak Wind might actually... Nope, never mind. I don't know what I f***ing expected. Volcarona ends up attacking and KOing Torn with Fire Blast, while Raging Bolt finishes off them off with Thunderbolt. I then realize that my victory comes down to a 90% chance of Draco Meteor hitting. Now, given how often Bleakwind's been missing, I'm understandably nervous, but I have no choice. I pray to Arceus and lock in the Draco Meteor. 90%. Come on. 90%. There's a 10% chance I'll lose this game. Come on. 90%. 90%. Yes! Yes! I beat Trick Room! Oh my god. I fucking felt my heart beating throughout the entire match. Oh my god, I feel vindicated. The amount of vindication I felt at that moment was indescribable. I was still in the tournament, and I did it by defeating my sworn nemesis. If that's not redemption, then I don't know what is. I can't relax just yet, though, as I'm about to be paired up with my 5th opponent, and with a record of 2-2, I'm still just 1 loss away from elimination. With little time to rest, I'm paired up with my 5th and final opponent. Wait, final? Adam, did you just spoil that you lost? Well, going into the tournament, I had a hard cutoff time of 1:30 p.m. since I had prior commitments that afternoon, so win or lose, this would be my final match. My final opponent of the day actually got top 4 at EUIC in the senior division last year with a team similar to the one he brought to our match. It looks like he's running a Tail Room team at first, as he's running both Tailwind on Tornadus and Trick Room on Farigiraf, but given the composition of his team, Farigiraf is most likely there for Trick Room reversal. Speaking of the rest of his team, it's all heavy hitters. Terra Fairy, Choice Specs, Golden Go, Dragon Fang, Reggie Drago, and of course, Urshifu and Ogerpon. How fitting that my final showdown of the day is a hyper-offense brawl. We both start game 1 with our Tailwind leads. My opponent with Tornadus and Golden Go, and myself with Torn and Incin. I assume he'll Tailwind right off the bat, but rather than try and stop it, I decide to set up Sunny Day so Incin can just nuke Golden Go with Flare Blitz. Golden Go Terras to Fairy to drop its Fairy weakness, so Sun-boosted Flare Blitz might not be enough anymore. But then I learned something extremely important. Our Tornaduses are speed tied. This means that they both have the exact same speed stat, and when that happens, it's basically a coin flip to decide who moves first. And unfortunately, their Tornadus wins the speed tie this turn, uses Taunt on my Torn, and Sunny Day fails. Torn can now only use Bleak Wind for the next 3 turns. Terra Fairy boosted Dazzling Gleam crits Torn and brings Incin down to about half, while Flare Blitz brings Golden Go down to half. I'm in big trouble here as my opponent has the speed advantage since he can use Tailwind and I can't. I also can't switch in Urshifu or Chen Pao because they're both weak to Dazzling Gleam. My only hope is that Incin survives another Dazzling Gleam, but he doesn't as I lose both him and Torn while my opponent sets up Tailwind. I'm down to my last 2 Pokemon, and at this point, priority is the only thing that can bail me out. I go for Terra Water Aqua Jet, and Urshifu just barely misses the KO on Golden Go. Tornadus goes for Icy Wind and gets the speed drop on Urshifu, but Dazzling Gleam doesn't KO Urshifu since I Terra'd. I then start to overthink and I get a little paranoid. I worry that my opponent has Farigiraf in the back to block priority, so I play it safe and protect Urshifu while Chen Pao uses Ice Spinner. However, they don't switch, Icy Wind removes Chen Pao's Focus Sash, and Dazzling Gleam knocks it out. At the very least, I can finish off Golden Go with another Aqua Jet, but Bleak Wind KOs Urshifu and I lose game 1. Maybe if Urshifu KO'd Golden Go that previous turn and Chen Pao got to attack, there would have been a slight chance of a comeback since they would both survive Icy Wind. It would have been a really tough climb though, as I still had no idea who their last 2 Pokemon were, and both of my Pokemon would be at reduced speed for the rest of the battle. Game 2 begins with the same leads. Since I know our Tornaduses are speed tied, I have to take the risk and go for Taunt on their Tornadus. My opponent Terras their Golden Go again, but this time, I win the speed tie. Tornadus goes for Bleak Wind though, but misses Incin, and Dazzling Gleam goes off, but Torn survives on 9 HP. Yes, I can set up Tailwind next turn. Even with Tailwind up, their Tornadus still outspeeds Inspin and fires off a Bleak Wind. Torn goes down, but Incin survives on 11 HP. I know I'm gonna lose Incin to recoil, but it's absolutely worth it as I take down Golden Go with Flare Blitz, and I still have the speed advantage. I have complete confidence that Chen Pao and Urshifu can finish this up under Tailwind. My opponent then sends out their own Urshifu. Terra Water Surging Strikes KOs Torn, but I foolishly protect Chen Pao since I forgot that my opponent has a bear that just doesn't care. Chen Pao thankfully survives the Surging Strikes, but I should have attacked with Chen Pao regardless of who their Urshifu targeted. Ogerpon comes out as my opponent's last Pokemon, and this time I use Sucker Punch on Urshifu to break its Focus Sash. Chen Pao goes down to an Aqua Jet, but Surging Strikes takes down Ogerpon before it can do anything. It's down to our 2 bears. As tempting as it is to use close combat since I outspeed, I'm not confident that it'll finish off their Urshifu at this range, and the defense drop could could be detrimental. I play it safe and go for surging strikes, and I bring it just low enough for Aqua Jet to be able to finish it off. My opponent uses close combat as I expected, and since their defense drops, Aqua Jet absolutely will get the KO next turn. Tailwind wears off and their Aqua Jet goes first, but my Urshifu hangs on and I barely win game 2. For the third time today, we're going to a game 3. It all comes down to this, the game that decides my tournament life. Winning means I could still make day 2, while losing means that it's all over. Game 3 begins with the same leads once again. Winning the speed tie won me game 2, so I have to go for taunt again. After Golden Go Terras yet again, I find out that the winner of the speed tie is their Tornadus. They taunt my Torn first, while Golden Go uses Dazzling Gleam, and Instant uses Flare Blitz on Golden Go. I'm in the exact same position as game 1, and it's not looking good at all. Their Tailwind goes up, Dazzling Gleam gets a double KO again, and the writing's on the wall. Unlike game 1, I'm not afraid to use double priority this time, as Sucker Punch and Aqua Jet KO Golden Go. My only way out is if they somehow get a double miss with Bleak Wind. But of course, that doesn't happen. Their Urshifu is sent out, and I go for the double priority again, but on Tornadus this time. Tornadus goes down, but their Urshifu hits mine with close combat, and suddenly I'm down to a Chen Pao with half HP, facing an Urshifu and Ogerpon with Tailwind up on their side. After running the numbers, I realize that my chances of winning are 0%. So I protect in vain as Urshifu finishes me off. I lose the match, and with a record of 2 wins and 3 losses, I am officially ineligible to make day 2. And with that, my run in the Victory Road December Challenge comes to an end. There's a lot that I could say about how I think my tournament run went, but I'm gonna let Livestream Adam say some things, because I think he summed it up really well, even though he's only on 5 hours of sleep. Take it away, Livestream Adam. And that is my run. You know what? 2-3's not bad. Way better than I did at Orlando. Plus, I played really well. Like, a lot of my matches, I feel like I played really well. I got boomed a few times, but I just think overall, like, my wins were great, and, like, some of my losses were really, really close. So, if there's anything I'm convinced of, it's that this team does have sauce to it. It can be tweaked, but I really think, like, this team can do crazy impressive damage, and if I make the right plays and calls, like, I can win games. This is why I am an advocate of hyper offense. My god. Speaking of which, y'all should watch that hyper offense video if you haven't already. You can see exactly why I love this archetype and why it's good, but why it's also weak in some ways. But you know what? I did fine. I'm not a pro player. Did the best that I could. I'm proud of my result. Well said, Livestream Adam. For my first best of 3 tournament since Orlando Regionals, I think I did pretty damn well. If I had the time to do more matches, I think I could have gotten a few more wins. I might even have finished the day with a positive record. This tournament was a great start to my redemption arc. However, we're nowhere near done. There are still many online tournaments I can compete in. I can even find the time in my schedule to go to a few locals. But most importantly, this redemption arc has an end goal. I want to go to one final regional tournament before the release of Pokémon Champions. I can't have my winless record at Orlando be my last regional result of Scarlet and Violet. And after finding out that Regulation F would be the final rule set, I made my decision. I knew where I needed to go. The venue that would host the culmination of my redemption arc. The tournament where I would show just how much I've grown as a VGC player in the past 2 years. The final Scarlet and Violet official tournament that I would attend. Seattle Regionals.